Your Honor, my name is Stephanie Aola, and I am Fabio's niece by marriage. Your Honor, I stand here today a woman traumatized, angry, and heartbroken. As Fabio's niece, I have lived almost a decade with unimaginable grief, betrayal, and pain. I am here not only as a family member who loved Fabio deeply, but also as a colleague in the hair industry who witnessed his brilliance firsthand. My life was shattered the day he was taken from us. In a way so brutal, so senseless, and so deliberate, it defies comprehension. On January 23rd, 2017, almost 9 years ago, life as I knew it ended.
Pause for a second. This isn't just grief speaking. This is a woman reliving a crime that shook her family to its core. Imagine standing in court, facing the person you believe orchestrated your uncle's murder. That's not just courage. That's emotional warfare in real time.
That was the day my uncle, Fabio Sementilli, was brutally stabbed to death in the backyard of his own home on my birthday. The same home where he had built a life, raised a family.
Now, that line right there, conspire to have him murdered, is legally massive. Conspiracy to commit murder means planning, agreeing, and taking steps toward the act. Even if Monica didn't wield the weapon, under U.S. law, conspiracy makes her equally responsible for the killing.
And welcome people with open arms. And the same home where his wife, Monica Sementilli, the woman he trusted more than anyone, conspired to have him murdered. Fabio Sementilli was everything his killer, Monica Sementilli, is not. He was kind, he was loyal, he was generous, he lifted people up, he didn't destroy them. He led with integrity, he loved with his whole heart. He made people feel seen, valued, safe, and inspired. Fabio brought joy, wisdom, and light to the world and everyone around him. Monica Sementilli brings darkness, manipulation, deceit, destruction, and death. Fabio gave his entire life to building others up. Monica spent years secretly tearing his life down. Fabio was loved. Monica is despised. Fabio Sementilli wasn't my uncle by blood, but he was my uncle in every way that truly mattered. He was family. He taught me to believe in myself, to chase my dreams, and to build honest relationships. He showed me the importance of family, family created through friendship, through work, and through love. He taught me about an industry he loved deeply. And I feel incredibly fortunate to have witnessed his Big Daddy magic in full force. Both on stage and behind the scenes. Fabio carried himself with grace, humility, laughter, and joy. He was always the first to raise his hand to tell a joke, to lighten the mood, to laugh until you couldn't breathe. He was the first to greet you with a giant smile, to run over and wrap you in one of his unforgettable bear hugs. And for me, he was always the first to say, "Hey, Angel, how are you?" Fabio's favorite saying, "Charge the mountain," has become a daily mantra for me and my family. For 8 years since Fabio was brutally and senselessly taken from us, that phrase has helped us get through. It reminds us to push forward, even when we are broken. And losing him is not just pain, it's betrayal. Fabio was taken from us by the very person he and our family trusted most. What happened wasn't random, it was planned, calculated, evil. And it came from someone who shared his home, his life, and his heart. It came from a woman my family showed love and respect to for over 20 years. The same woman who smiled in our faces while plotting Fabio's murder behind our backs. The same woman we comforted, supported, and defended while she betrayed us all. The same woman who played the grieving widow while secretly having an affair with a convicted sex offender.
Think about that. 2.5 months of testimony, evidence, and witnesses. What would you do if someone you trusted was accused of something this dark? Would you seek justice or closure? Let me know in the comments.
Conspiring with him to kill her husband. And so today, Your Honor, I stand before the monster who deceived us all and who set this entire plan in motion, who lied, who schemed, who manipulated, and who murdered. Monica is the reason my family is broken. The reason my family knows names like Robert Baker and Christopher Austin. The reason Fabio is dead. The reason we have all been dragged through this unbearable, lifelong nightmare. The reason a 2.5-month trial was held, and the reason we are all here today. None of us sitting in this courtroom today could have possibly imagined the level of pain, betrayal, and sheer evil that would rip through our lives and redefine who we are. That is the evil of Monica Sementilli, an adulterer whose selfishness, treachery, and complete absence of human decency shattered our family, destroyed the man who trusted her most, and left us all with a life sentence of grief, rage, and unanswered questions. A monster who was found guilty on April 11th in this very courtroom by 12 unbiased jurors. Guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, murder by means of lying in wait, and murder for financial gain. 12 strangers, 12 people with no connection to our family. And yet, after hearing the evidence, after seeing the lies and the cruelty laid bare, they saw the truth as clearly as we always have. I remember that phone call from my husband. The call that shattered everything. He told me Fabio had been murdered. I dropped to my knees in pure grief. Pain shot through my body like electricity. I was sick to my stomach. I couldn't make sense of what I was hearing. And even though that day was almost 9 years ago, I remember it like it happened yesterday. The details are burned into my memory. Every moment, every word. I remember my husband yelling through the phone, "They killed him. They killed my uncle." I remember the horror that gripped me. I laid awake that entire night, unable to close my eyes, tears streaming down my face, praying to God that this was some kind of sick joke, that I'd wake up and it would all be a mistake, that Fabio would still be alive, and that things would go back to how they were. But they didn't, and they never will. Almost 9 years later, the pain has not faded. The trauma of what happened to Fabio, of how he was taken from us, still haunts me as deeply today as it did the moment I first heard the news. It is a relentless, paralyzing grief, a kind of sadness that doesn't ease with time. It lives in me. It shapes my everyday. It has stolen my peace, my sleep, and the sense of safety I once had. This wasn't just a loss. It was a brutal, calculated murder, and I am still living with the wreckage. After the murder, I remember how I began to question things that didn't seem right. I was trying to make sense of something so senseless, and it never made sense. I couldn't believe that just days after Fabio was brutally murdered in his own backyard, the wake was held in the very place where his life had been violently taken.
This part always hits hard. When she says it felt like there was a rush to erase Fabio, it speaks to that chilling aftermath of homicide. When grief collides with suspicion, was it mourning or manipulation already in motion?
Complete with a carefully arranged shrine by his devoted wife. I was terrified that my husband had to be in that house. Who would want to gather there? How could Monica find comfort in a home where her husband had just been murdered? How was she able to compose a memorial for Fabio just days after finding him dead? It felt disturbing and unnatural. I couldn't believe that my husband and family members were asked to take Fabio's belongings, his tools, his suits, his jewelry, back to Canada. It felt cold and cruel. Just days after Fabio was brutally murdered, it felt like there was already a rush to erase him.
Please turn off electronic devices, please.
To move on. Wouldn't you want every reminder of him close? Especially after losing him so suddenly and so violently? It didn't feel like grief, it felt like guilt. Nothing felt right, nothing made sense. The details of the murder Monica described never pointed to a robbery. Nothing of value was taken except for my uncle's life. Even the Porsche was found days later abandoned but untouched. What could possibly be the motive? What was the intent? Fabio had no enemies. He was loved and adored by everyone. I never believed for a second that this was a case of wrong place, wrong time. Because Fabio was an innocent man, a good man. Our family went in circles, months after months, combing through all the details, envisioning different scenarios of what could have possibly happened that day, over and over and over and over again into exhaustion. We now know that Fabio was targeted. This was a cold, calculated conspiracy, a plan orchestrated by his own wife, a plan rooted in greed, betrayal, and staggering cruelty. She wanted his money. She wanted her freedom. She wanted a new life. And she was willing to have her husband butchered to get it. And at the time, the full truth hadn't revealed itself yet, not then. But now I see it for exactly what it was. A premeditated execution carried out by cowards, driven by a woman with no soul. At the funeral, Monica wore black gloves and a dramatic black veil that covered her face. I remember a chill running down my spine the moment I saw her. But I pushed that feeling away because this was Fabio's wife. I remember the whispers, the hushed conversations, the quiet observations. People were saying she wouldn't make eye contact, that she didn't even remember who they were, that something felt off. And then a good friend of mine turned to me and asked, how was their marriage? Did they get along? I was shocked, offended. In my mind, they were the most beautiful couple. And they adored each other. Because that's what we all believed. And from that point on, there was a string of events that just never felt right. His cremation, a 1-month memorial mass, Easter, with my family, we were shamed for asking about the investigation, told not to speak of that day or contact police. We were silenced into pretending things were normal when nothing was. And then Monica continued to live in that house. This wasn't just any house, it was a crime scene. It was the place where her children lost their father in the most violent, terrifying way imaginable. And still no urgency to restore the security system and no concern for her daughter's safety. I was living thousands of miles away and I was terrified for them. I felt hopeless. I now know that Monica never needed protection because she had a very clear understanding of exactly who the killers were, and she was one of them. My family was manipulated into believing that all of these devious actions were somehow normal, that this was just grief, that Monica was just doing her best to cope. Out of love and respect for Fabio, we silenced ourselves because we believed that honoring her was what Fabio would have wanted, because we loved him that much. I remember the day of my youngest child's baptism, April 2nd, 2017. My mother-in-law and Morella, devastated and heartbroken, were speaking on the phone with Monica. They wanted so desperately to comfort her, to check in on her and the girls, to help her through her grief, even from thousands of miles away. And Monica, you made them believe you were inconsolable. You cried on the phone. You were too distraught to talk. You told them it's just not a good day for me. And they believed you because they loved you, because they trusted you. But in court, we learned the truth. Just days before that call, you were in Las Vegas with your lover and co-conspirator, Robert Baker. You weren't grieving, you were partying. You were parading around like a teenager. You were grabbing crotches. You were whoring yourself out to the men who you conspired with to slaughter Fabio, acting like a desperate, soulless woman with no shame, no conscience, and no remorse. But the truth is, that wasn't an act. That was you being exactly who you are. Desperate, soulless, and utterly devoid of any humanity. You're diabolical, evil, and sick.
This arrest marked a turning point, when suspicion became evidence. Remember, an arrest doesn't equal guilt, but prosecutors only move forward when they believe the case is airtight. The emotional whiplash of this family must have been unreal, from grief to validation, all at once.
And that Vegas trip, that was one of just the many trips with your murdering lover in the 6 months before law enforcement could catch up with you. The most insulting of them all was the I'm going to go walk a golf course alone in Fabio's honor trip. By then, even your own family was starting to see through the lies. Even they couldn't pretend anymore. I was there as you accepted the Lifetime Achievement Award on behalf of the man you murdered. The man loved and adored by every single person on that stage and in that room. Your performance didn't fool anyone. Your act was crumbling, and your bullshit was impossible to ignore. June 14th, 2017, the puzzle that had tormented me with sleepless nights and endless grief finally fit together. You, Monica, and your vile lover, Robert Baker, were arrested for the murder of Fabio Sementilli. I remember hearing the news and feeling for the first time like the weight of grief that had clung to my soul was finally lifted. Suddenly it all made sense, every single piece of it, every unanswered question, every gut instinct, it all fit together to tell the story of who you really are. That night, after 6 long, agonizing months, I cried tears of relief. But that relief was short-lived. Because the arrest didn't just bring answers, it opened the floodgates to the truth. And the truth was even more horrifying than anything I could have ever possibly imagined. Sitting through this trial, watching you smirk and scribble, while I listened to every horrifying detail, was the most painful experience of my life. I was sick to my core, broken. Never in my darkest nightmares could I have imagined an 18-month torrid sexual affair between Monica Sementilli and a convicted sex offender named Robert Baker. Never could I have conceived that these two despicable, vile creatures would be scheming and plotting Fabio's death to steal his life insurance money and start a new life together. Never in all of time would I have imagined Monica living a double life so evil, so depraved, that she would set up her own husband to die, while the rest of us watched her Instagram posts peg her as the grieving, devoted wife. But perhaps the most horrifying part of it all, never could I have imagined that she had planned this execution so that her youngest daughter would be the one to arrive home first, so that her own child would be the one to discover her father's lifeless body, brutally stabbed to death. Only a devil could carry out something so calculated, so cruel, and so utterly heartless against her own child. Never could I have foreseen the mountain of evidence collected by the LAPD, a mountain so overwhelming, so undeniable, that it would prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Monica Sementilli orchestrated the murder of Fabio Sementilli. Never in my worst nightmares could I have imagined hearing her and her murdering lover, in their own words, recorded from jail, casually dissecting the murder they committed. Monica didn't sound broken, she sounded proud, wicked, calculated. I was sickened to hear her profess her love for the man who police told her slaughtered her husband. My poor uncle had no idea the devil that lay beside him. On the recordings, you could hear the two of them whispering, laughing, and scheming, spewing lies to get the evidence to fit their version of reality. I was listening to the minds of two full-fledged, cold-blooded criminals, and I was sick. They discussed the lack of video surveillance, not just on the day of the murder, but even mentioning the attempt the day before. They discussed the DNA. They spun a cover story so outrageous, it was an insult to all of us. She panicked over her Viber messages, wiped a computer clean, and even talked about erasing the Sementilli name. This is a betrayal so deep, it is unforgivable. Never once did we hear sadness. Never once did she express grief over the loss of her husband, the father of her children, the man she spent 20 years with. She never once, since her arrest, has said Fabio's name. She never begged for justice. She never pleaded for the police to find the real killers, because she is the real killer. Fabio's death was never a trauma for Monica. Instead, it was an obstacle, something she had to get through and move out of the way so that she could begin her new life of freedom. That's why it was so easy for her to lie and manipulate the facts surrounding his murder. She wasn't distraught, she had planned it. She had been so far removed from the reality of what she was doing for so long that by the time it happened, it meant nothing to her. It meant nothing for her to casually tell a car salesperson that Fabio had been murdered in his truck, just to get a better deal, just to get sympathy from strangers, even though that was a lie. Monica used her husband's murder for her own benefit. Deals on cars, on trips, on hotels. Any way she could spin his death to her advantage, she did. And she did it without remorse, because his death never mattered to her. His loss meant nothing, and she treated it exactly that way. And never ever could I have imagined that on the exact same days we were mourning Fabio, at his wake and his funeral, crying together, trying to survive this nightmare, Monica was sending sexually explicit, vulgar, pornographic images to Robert Baker of herself from her parents' home, all while still wearing her wedding ring. She wore gloves and veil at the funeral, a costume of mourning, while privately desecrating Fabio's memory behind closed doors. It is shameless and vile. Monica, you are the most despicable and evil of all mankind. You are a liar, a deceitful manipulator, an adulterer, and a murderer. A man who loved you, trusted you, and built a life with you was brutally murdered, and you cremated him without discussion, without dignity, and placed his remains in someone else's family plot, as if that was good enough. No headstone, no plaque, no resting place that honors who he was, a devoted father, a respected professional, a man beloved by so many. You claimed you had no money to bury him properly, but somehow you had money for Vegas. You had money for getaways with the man who murdered your husband. You had money for your new life, but not for a grave. It is shameful on every level. The depth of your manipulation didn't stop with our family. Your lies didn't just poison us or deceive Fabio's friends and colleagues. It suffocated your own family. You wrapped them so tightly in your web of deception that they clung to denial, even with the truth staring them in the face. Their denial added new layers to our grief. The man they claimed to have treated like their own son and brother, a man who respected and loved them. They showed their love in return by standing behind the one who orchestrated his murder, the one who left the door unlocked and let the killers in. Robert Baker and Christopher Austin would have never crossed paths with Fabio, never, if it weren't for Monica and her despicable, adulterous lifestyle. Monica put those men into his life, and Monica signed his death warrant. And to be clear about one thing, every single piece of evidence collected and presented in this case was created by Monica. Every person she lied to, manipulated, used, deceived, and betrayed came forward to tell the truth and expose the real monster she is. The pornographic images, the digital evidence, the deleted emails, the digital surveillance, the lies to law enforcement, the safe, the Viber messages, the deceit around the home security system, Robert Baker, her phone code, the same phone from which she sent thousands of messages to her lover, messages plotting the murder of her husband. The jail recordings, the intercepted calls, and those disgusting jail letters, and on and on and on. All of that came from her, not the police, not the prosecutors, not the judge, not the court, not Fabio's friends and families. She built the Mount Everest of evidence that revealed her true self, a sick, twisted, depraved, demonic, diabolical monster. And let's also be very clear about this. The victim in this case is Fabio Sementilli, the man she conspired to kill with her lover.
This closing plea isn't just about punishment. It's about peace. What you're hearing is a family demanding emotional justice, not just legal sentencing. In cases like this, the courtroom becomes both a battleground and a memorial.
And the other victims? Every single person who loved him. Every single person she manipulated, deceived, and lied to. They are the victims of her evil. And every single one of them is glad that she is exactly where she belongs for eternity. Your Honor, today I stand before you in honor of Fabio. I stand in truth, in pain, but in strength. As Fabio always told me, charge the mountain. Today I am charging that mountain. For him, for our family, for every single person whose life was touched by Fabio Sementilli's light and shattered by Monica Sementilli's darkness. We are the victims, and she is exactly where she belongs. Your Honor, we beg this court to sentence Monica Sementilli to the maximum penalty allowed under the law, so that she never again walks free and never again breathes the fresh air of the life she so brutally stole. Let her spend the rest of her days behind bars, vanishing into the darkness that mirrors her soul. Our family deserves peace, knowing that, like a rabid animal, she has been locked away, trapped in the cage of her own destruction for eternity. Let us never again speak her name in the same breath as Fabio's. Let us forget everything about her, who she was, who she pretended to be, and who she actually is, for she is nothing. Nothing but a hollow shell, a soul devoid of any humanity. Let her be haunted for the rest of her days by Fabio's voice, his laughter, and his face every single time she closes her eyes. There will be no peace, no silence, just the constant echo of the man she betrayed and destroyed, the man she will never outrun, even in her sleep. Let her be forgotten as the clump of nothingness that she is. Her mantra is ride or die. Well, Monica, now you can ride or die in prison. Thank you.
Thank you.